just jump right in today with Work the System, chapters 1-4. Mr. Cook,
Yes,
since it is your book, we'll let you lead.
absolutely. So we've got 30 minutes, so I'll go ahead and get started. So chapters 1-4. So really, this is kind of taking us through, kind of getting us into what he calls the systems mindset. And then kind of talking about stepping back from your systems and really kind of taking really a bird's eye view or like a systems manager approach. So really kind of getting into it in chapter 1. He really kind of talked about essentially, he kind of takes all the chaos in the world and kind of puts, a different spin on it. If you really think about it, everything in the world works 99%, 99.9% perfectly the way it's really designed and built from a system standpoint. Now, whether the system is operating the way you want it to or it's yielding the results you want is really a different question. In hearing that, how does that kind of change you guys' view on, I guess,
like the recording is in progress? Yes. Like you said, everybody assumes that we're in the middle of chaos. Mm-hmm. Like everything is so chaotic. Everything, it's like everything works exactly like you said, just boom, boom, boom. It's like, so that just gets your mind into thinking, all right, if I've got all this chaos and there's all this order in the world, all right, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Yeah, I can't just chalk it up to, oh yeah, the world's chaotic. We have to have systems. Right. And for me, this is kind of eye-opening because I've been building a lot more through KV Core, which is our CRM, building a lot more funnels and things like that they've been teaching us. And so I get a lead in and all of a sudden it's in the machine and it starts going. All of a sudden I'm watching all these new people that I don't even have to like call necessarily off the bat. You can see what they're looking at. You can see what they're interacting with, all this stuff. And so it's like, if you take time to actually build the system or tweak the system or whatever, as opposed to just saying, oh, just real estate, we're just going to run around there like chickens with their heads cut off, and that's how we're going to make it. So that was a really cool part of that chapter for me.
Absolutely. Alicia, Laura, thoughts?
So for me, I thought it was kind of cool how he starts dissecting Woodstock and talks about how like some of the systems work, some of the systems don't work, and how when your systems are working, some of them on the front end, like day one, it was sunny. The musicians were all there. The systems that were working were in place. But if there would have been a day 4, it would have been total mayhem. And I think that really, this book, I think, is going to be really good to start the year off with, because the end of 2022, my team and I and my agents that I coach, we spent the entire month of December putting systems in place. We wrote our business plan. If they did what they were supposed to do, they wrote their 1-3-5s, or at least kind of started it. And as I was working through my 1-3-5 and getting all of my jobs down, everything that the company has to do is now on paper, and we're starting to farm those jobs out. It was super eye-opening that the only reason I haven't broke through the $250,000 ceiling in my business is because my systems are all broken. The only system that was correct in my business was customer service. That was it. That was literally the only thing that was correct. Probably the most important system to keep my doors open, because it got us lots of referrals, and the beauty of real estate is, referrals and closings equal a pretty decent salary. I don't ever want to do customer service again. I now want to be the keeper of all of my systems.
Right.
How did you discover that only one system was working properly?
By writing my 1-3-5, by figuring out what actually had to be done to make my goals really happen. I was consistently not getting to my calls. To Steve's point, when new leads came in, nothing or no one was touching them. We now have a smart campaign where there's an immediate text message that goes out to them. Once that text message goes out, if they respond, I get the response in KV Core. So, to Steve's point, I'm a one-man show right now. It would be better if as soon as it came in, someone called, but until I have an ISA that can call the moment it comes in, my text message takes that place. And if they respond to the text message, I immediately can respond to them. I probably have anywhere from 20 to 35 hot leads for January that all are expecting a call from me over the next probably 14 days. And I know my systems now tell me when to call them. I don't have to remember. I mean, that was a system to know who to call and when to call is probably the most important thing you can do as a realtor, because you try to keep it all up here and you're like, oh shit, I need to call that person, or oh shit, I need to call that person, and you forget. And so it was watching the holes in my bucket. And I think the biggest eye opener was when I started my funnel campaigns. I was bringing in all these leads, and then summer happened and I wasn't making my daily calls like I should have. And then August happened. And within the first week of August, I could physically calculate over $7 million worth of business I had lost because I didn't work my systems in the summer. I didn't do my phone calls. That was gut wrenching. $7 million worth of business lost would have doubled my income from last year and we would have hit the $500,000 GCI this year if I wouldn't have let my systems go by the wayside.
Right.
That's a really expensive mistake. Really.
So
Right.
in terms of the book, and so I'm doing the audiobook, and this one for me, it being read to me is not clicking as well as the last two. So I don't know if it's a me problem, or if I should get a paper copy and follow along. I feel like the first couple of chapters are setting up the idea of systems.
Mhm.
And so I kept waiting for like an overlay to business. So I feel like maybe I'm kind of blowing in the wind until we get a little deeper in the book. I'm not sure. I'm having a hard time not following along, but I'm having a hard time. What's the word I'm looking for?
So, Alicia, what I will say, to your point, this book does get very technical. And so I would imagine reading it through an audiobook, you may miss some of those intricacies. What I will say, though, in some of the later chapters, he does direct us back to your businesses. So there's a lot of this stuff that we'll kind of get into, a lot of documentation that he talks about. And it's really crucial when you start to talk about systems. And really, that's a good segue into chapter 2. So essentially, once you've gotten the systems mindset, I feel like the next question becomes, which systems do you work on? Because if you really think about it, as a systems engineer or systems manager in your own business, you also don't want to get stuck working on small nuances that don't need to be worked on. You really want to kind of find, and this is really a blast from the past, that circle of influence. He kind of takes that, he references another book that we read, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about that circle of influence. And so really what he's trying to drive is to not worry about systems that are beyond your control, that are significant. You really want to focus on what's really driving your business. So great example of this, Laura, like you just said, you noted some of your other systems may not have been as strong last year. However, the one system that you essentially said, stop worrying about my other systems and let's work on what works. And what worked for you was customer service. Great example of chapter 2, really stop worrying about other systems that could be worked on later that really, aren't giving you the best bang for your buck, and just kind of take charge of the systems that you alter, you understand the most, you have the most control over. What are you guys' thoughts from chapter 2? Does it make it a little easier to kind of, approach systems after kind of hearing this mindset? What were your thoughts kind of going through chapter 2?
So Alicia, just FYI, I was struggling with the same thing. I went back and listened to it a third time on my drive today, and I picked up a whole bunch more pieces to the puzzle, because Alicia and I talked last night. I was like, this book is moving slow and I'm getting very little. So I re-listened. And that was something that clicked to me today, was in chapter 2, was I think a lot of times, and I don't know if this happens in your world, David, but us as realtors, we're like, oh, there's a shiny object, and oh, there's a shiny object, and that's going to make me more money. And oh my God. And so as I'm coaching my agents, and I was kind of proud for this to come to fruition in this chapter, you know, we talk about your 1, 3, 5 and your 3 buckets, and not fishing out of any of those other buckets, because in real estate, there's about 1 million buckets you can fish out of. And if you're going to fish out of every bucket, you need a system that's efficient in each of those. And so we are talking about, as I'm coaching, you know, these guys, is your SOI, your sphere of influence, the people that already know and like you. What are your systems for that? Perfect that one first, then perfect the next one, then perfect the third one. And don't try to do even just those 3 systems at one time. I mean, work on them all at one time, but have like a 30, 60, 90. The first 30 days, this one's going to be done. In the next 60 days, this one's going to be done. In the next 60 days or 90 days, this one will be done. Because, you know, I know for me that it's just overwhelming. You can't do it all. And the things that are 100% out of your control seem to be the ones that you spend the most amount of time trying to fix, or frustrated about, or and until you get to a point, you know, break through each ceiling and you're high enough, you just can't. And so it was very eye-opening to see that my approach, even before I read the book, is in the right direction. So I think that felt good.
Right.
David, I think you're doing a great job. I felt better just in the way you the book, that going back and listening to it through the way you described it would help me catch up in a way. I feel like maybe I'm behind somehow, but
Yeah, he doesn't have the same voice as the guy that did Never Split the Difference. So yeah, I found myself struggling. I had to go, all right, I missed that whole 5 minutes because I started daydreaming, so I had to go back. But to your point, I mean, we do realtors. We are a shiny object. I mean, unfortunately, I don't know of any other profession or business that's as bad as we are when it comes to the shiny object syndrome. And my word for the year is simplicity. And if I can just, we know it works. We know what we need to do. If we have the 4 pillars or whatever, and we just strip them all down and create systems in each one of them and just work that, and don't get cute and don't go side. You know what I mean? You know, I don't know, someone enjoying the chaos or whatever. It's like, we can just build the systems, you know, it's going to make life a lot easier this year.
Well, and I think we try to overcomplicate stuff where we don't need to, right? We sit there and we try to make it a lot more than what it needs to be. Just call your folks, pick up the phone, send an email,
but
so do it consistently.
It's, to me, as a realtor, I sometimes feel like if somebody calls me out of the blue and says, hey, can you sell my house? And we sell it and it does well and we get paid on it, it's like, we almost feel like we stole the money almost, or I don't want to say stole the money, but it was like, it was too easy. It's like, it has to be a thing where we go through 2 years of chasing somebody and, you know, the deal falls through 4 times and whatever. That's the only way we're supposed to, it's like the easy one. But it's like, if we did everything right, that's how it's supposed to be, you know?
Actually, talking about simplicity, like as we go into the 3rd chapter, I guess, how simple is it to make a mistake between the forest and the trees? You know, like it's taking a step back. And I think we kind of, as all of us are in the services industry, and so kind of interesting challenge that presents, at least for me, and I'm sure for you guys, taking a step back is hard. Because it is hard to mistake the forest for the trees, especially in the service industry, because we're performing the services, we're in it, we're doing the customer service. You know, we're doing all these things. We're the one-man show, the one-woman show. You know, so I feel like it presents a bit of a challenge sometimes, really truly being able to take a step back and kind of examining your own systems. How have you guys, or what ideas do you guys have to kind of address that challenge or kind of to fight back with that?
So for me this year, it's accountability. I've got a person I'm now meeting with once a week. We're bouncing ideas off of one another. And then as far as our productivity, I've got all of my collaboration folks. If they're doing what they should be doing, they're turning their numbers in weekly, and we're sending out a weekly report, and you can kind of see where you're landing in the group of humans that are all kind of working in the same environment that you're working in. And so for me, it was checks and balances this year. It's making sure that life is, one, simple, because I think we way overcomplicate things, like way overcomplicate things. And two, having those checks and balances. I think as entrepreneurs and as parents, we tend to take on way too much stuff. We try to do it all. And when you're managing two full-time jobs as an entrepreneur and a parent, both of those things are going to need help getting done, or whatever you're trying to do with your kids or your work. And so I think it's just checks and balances and accountability for me this year. I want it to hurt. I want it to really hurt if I don't hit my transaction goals, which it's a big number. I mean, it's 150 transactions this year. So that's a big goal, and it's got to hurt if I don't make it.
Right. I think accountability is huge, especially as working with small teams, and kind of looking at those. I think you're pretty big on this. Those guys.
So for me, I think, and I'm at a slightly different phase, but I'm at a point where I'm trying to, like with the honey badger meetings or in reading or going through the EXP training, is like things that come up often and that a lot of people weigh in and say work. It's like, okay, I'm going to do that, and then just do it, because there's a history there of it working, and none of these things are ever very hard. So for me, I guess I'm following the simplicity pattern too, but there's so much knowledge out there about what works. And so I'm just trying to zigzag through the feedback, right? Or the suggestions, or like, and everyone's offering that information in terms of growth. And so instead of like feeling like I'm spinning my wheels and starting at square one and drinking from a fire hose, is like, okay, 50 people on the call today weighed in and said their postcards are this size and that's what works. So when I'm going to do postcards, and I'm going to send it out right now and get it done and move on to the next thing, and not worry so much about the design or my logo or how many houses to send it to or what size or how often. Like, just get one and then move on to something else in that cyclical pattern. So I'm going off of tried and true and just doing it.
Love it.
The system. It's working so far.
Right.
Well, for me, so getting into the parenting and the marriage thing, to kind of, because like you said, Laura, I mean, we got to balance both of those. My wife and I went to this awesome conference back in November, and we had all these things that we're going to work on, and like they're on the book, and we're all going to work on these things and whatever. And within a month, like they were all gone. Like we just completely, and I don't know how we would create a system around them, but it's important. Like you said, like if we don't have this system built or something around us, like you go back to where you were, or so like the system thing doesn't just apply for me in the business, but it's also of all these ideas we came up with. How can we implement them to where it's not just don't forget this, don't forget this, but we got to build like a machine where these things are constantly done. Mm-hmm. So for me, is like, it's not just the work, but I got to do that in my personal life too.
Right. Sweet. Awesome. Well, for chapter 4, just kind of wrapping it up. So as we kind of take a new kind of role in our businesses as like a system manager. One thing that I'll kind of challenge you guys to keep in mind. So one thing he mentioned in the book. So if the system could talk, it would say, my single goal, and I'm passionate about it, is to accomplish the task that I was built with. So kind of knowing that as a systems manager, you can really take that and fly with it. Because really that just describes the system. There's nothing else to it. It's that simple. And with that, with the next few chapters, you'll kind of start to find out how you can take those goals and really kind of adjust them and shift them in your own ways to take your business to another level. So in chapter 4, I just wanted to leave you guys with that thought. Is there anything you guys kind of took from this chapter that, maybe was new for you, gave you some good ideas for your business, even for your personal life? What were you guys' thoughts for chapter 4? And this is kind of taking the driver's seat and turning into a systems manager.
So for me, it was.
I'll go first.
Oh, go ahead.
So I did go out and buy a classic paper calendar for the desk. It's like one of those jumbo desk calendars, just so that I could physically see my plans and know like where there are days that there could be more or less, or like in my house, this is kind of a shared desk. So for certain things at certain times, I will have free help. But anything that I can get help with will be right here written down so that it's less taxing for me to even assign something to someone else to help. So yeah, I went out and bought a $5 paper calendar. I'm pretty excited about it. I at least got rolling. I felt a little lost, but I did go out and get rolling.
So I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of Alicia. So for me, it's the same thing. I've got every employee of mine writing down every job they're doing, because I think Louis probably has the job of 1.5 people right now. I think Christian probably only has the job of about a half a person right now. And Lisa's trying to figure out where she fits in that system, in that process. And so for me, it's just getting everything out of my brain that I do and on paper, and then allocating, okay, level of importance. Does this have to be done? If this task doesn't get done today, does it hurt my family? Does it hurt my relationship? And does it hurt my business? And does it go against my religion? Those are kind of my 4 checks and balances. Like, are the people that I care about, the things most important, suffering? And if the answer is no, it's going to the bottom of the list. So for me, it's prioritizing, figuring out what it is that has to be done, and then realigning it with the right person, the right hat, like really diving into that idea that I am a multi-$100 an hour human. Does it make sense for me to do that job? And if not, who can I pay where it makes more sense, so that the only things I'm touching are the things that put food on the table for every human underneath me that needs a salary? Because what they do allows me to make more money, but it doesn't necessarily make more money.
Right.
And I mean, we talk about that when we're in Bold, about how, you have 5 things to do as a real estate agent, and lead generation is the most important one of them. And it's like, if everything falls through and you can only do one thing during the day, it has to be lead generation. You have to be willing to let other things slide, so that's kind of the approach that I'm coming with that. I guess that's what we build the systems for, is so that some of those things that, like you said, if we were going to make $200 an hour, I don't need to be doing some of this stuff. I either need to automate it or have somebody else do it. But also, if I'm giving it to somebody else, like my system that's helping me, we need to have a plan for, I need you to do this. So sometimes we do have to step back to write the code or machine or whatever, and then let them go run with it.
Step back to step forward.
Right, exactly. And so, the visualization that he had, I think it was this chapter, we talked about how, like, our body is just like a bunch of cells clinging together. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
it's like, but they're all subsystems within the big system or whatever. And if one thing gets jacked up, the whole thing's jacked up. So it's an interesting way of looking at how I want to build my business this year.
Absolutely.
Well,
Awesome.
I'm excited because we're taking over the fucking world, just so y'all know.
It's written down. Taking over.
No. It is written down. It is in blood, like it's tattooed across my back. We are taking over the world one house at a time. The end.
Let's do it.
Take that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys humoring me on this book. I absolutely am obsessed with this book. I would say next chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
I think it's about an hour. So that'll give us some talking points for next week.
Perfect. And then we'll circle back around. I'll make sure we can either shift what time we meet next week or do it a different day.
Right.
But I since we're all on that call, Dave, and I'll get you hooked up with the class. But since we're all on it, let me get back to my office and I'll send out a few times for our call next week. That way we don't miss the call or the class. Does that work?
Yeah, I don't want to miss. I don't want us to
neither.
slide backwards.
Yep. Oh, no backwards on this one.
Yeah, no.
No way. No Jose.
Yay, here's to 2023 book club. Awesomeness. High five.
Yes.
All right, bye y'all.
Awesome.
Bye.
See y'all.